Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. To some of you and peace out to the rest of you. Hit the share button because the message is more important than the messenger. We just had Hurricane Beryl go back to being a tropical storm, and it somewhat dropped the humidity here down to a medium level, but it's still humid. And I see why people are so lazy here on the Gulf Coast. It does make you sleep long hours living here. But anyway, that being said, I jumped on here once again before running an errand with mom to point out to you knuckleheads that what's been going on in a nutshell is that, yes, I've lived abroad. And so I've compared pretty much how sisters view me to how they view other brothers. I've contrasted that. So I have a sense of sisters liking other brothers more because that's how I grew up. But there are parts of the world where they will take a white husband over a brother. And I can see why it is that really both white men and black men would look at each other in bewilderment when we're in these foreign mating or marriage markets. Because even in these other places, women look at black men as the bedbuck and not as the husband, and then they look at the white guy as the husband, but not as the bedbuck. And in all honesty, both of these views can be insulting as hell, but it is a greater insult to be viewed as the husband and not as the bedbuck. In the woman's own mind and the man's understanding of the woman's mind, that is the greater insult. So I understand why it is that we would look at white guys and say, well, I mean, she's looking at you as the one that she can bring home to her parents and brag about. And he's looking and saying, yeah, but she's looking at you as the one that can slam it to the back and actually curl her toes. And I mean, if she leaves me, she'll leave me for you. And we're looking and saying, well, if she leaves me, she'll leave me for you, failing to realize that it is actually very closely tied to the argument between lighter skin and darker skin brothers as to which one these women prefer the most. Because a black American woman or a black British woman, well, let's say a black American woman, at one point could have taken a lighter skinned guy home to her parents and they would have said, girl, you're moving up. And she could have taken a darker skinned brother around her friends and they would have said, girl, you getting it in the bed. It could have gone that way. And it did. And what they did was they played us against each other so that each one of us would think that we had to develop something else in order to be good enough to qualify. It worked, because even now, without hating each other, many of us still fall into the debate. Because when I tell you how they treated me, you would look and say, no, black, they wouldn't, no. Because I'm dark skinned and they would call me all kind of burnt and crispy. And then I realized looking back, you know what? It was both. We're both telling the truth. They were disrespectful to both of us because they could be, because it was fun to them, because it was hilarious, because it was a big joke, because they're not honest. That's why we saw what we saw. That's the reason for that. And so now I'm sitting up and I'm saying to you that if we're going to sit up here and debate, then we're going to lose time. We don't need to debate about this. We need to see it for what it is. And we be the ones, if we want to tell anyone anything, we tell the Wyatt guys what it is. Listen, Mr. Wyatt, here's the deal. She sees you as the husband. She sees me as the bedbuck. Neither one is fully on a compliment. Neither one really says that you're a complete man. She sees you as financially a man and me as sexually, physically a man. And we could debate about which one is more of an insult, but they're both insults, even if she doesn't realize it. And most of the time, she does realize it. That's what we have to start to say to each other and to them if we want to say anything to them at all. But certainly to each other. We need to understand that. So if you go into South America and the Afro-Latina in Colombia or wherever is looking at you and she's saying, well, I'm not really interested in you. And she starts to talk to that white guy that's with you more and say more to him, then you just say, look, she's in it for the money. And we don't like being used for money, so bye. And then you start moving around and you know what, that white woman that has or is supposed to have some money in life looks at you and she wants to date you but not really marry you, but she does want to get it in with you too. Then you look at her and you say, well, you actually see me as kind of a toy and I don't tolerate that because you wouldn't tolerate it if I saw you as that. I am attempting right now to make it such, and I'm doing what I can when I am abroad to make it such that you actually have options even when you don't live in the Middle East, because in some traditional and conservative parts of the world, I want you to be seen as what you are. As much or as close to a complete package as any man can possibly be, especially considering the circumstances you had to face being black in the United States or in Britain. I'm doing what I can for that purpose. I want to get in this car here and turn the AC on, so that's what you guys are going to hear. So that I don't sit up here sweating while I'm preaching, and then go into the grocery store with Mom Dukes, sweating under the air conditioning. They got strong air conditioning here on the Gulf Coast. So look, this is not something for us to get caught up in, and this is not something for us to obsess about or to really argue about it, to get angry about. But you do have to move carefully because on one hand, there oftentimes is a genuine lust for you that these women will feel. As a black man, they can feel genuine lust for you in many cases, especially if you're a black man that's clean cut and well toned. And really, that is one of the things you wanted from African American women growing up before you became aware of the options to leave. And these women can do that without trying to diminutize you in other ways. And this is what makes them better than the Westernishas in general, especially the Western sisters. Frankly, Western white women can show you genuine lust, but not diminutize you for a while. Then eventually that comes into play and they have to diminutize you. But that's later. Right now, what you need to understand and realize is that you should not be thrown off because you came into any location or any nation with one extreme view of how they were going to view you. You should not go in thinking, oh, they hate black men, so they're all my enemies, so F them. You make enemies out of friends. And you should not either also go in thinking, hey, you know what? They love them some brothers out here. They got stars in their eyes. They start imagining futures with us and things like that. You got to get rid of that too. You have to understand that it goes somewhere down the middle. The dual mating strategy is something that the Westernisha is going to practice openly, in your face, proudly, and going to rub in your face as well. Like, yes, in word, I am going to take your money and screw him. She will do that. And if the guy she's screwing starts to take her more seriously than she wants, then she will tell him, listen, thank you, but you're the bed buck. I'm getting my money over here. You just worry about laying that pipe. You do it very well. Then she'll come out and tell him that. You have to understand that if you have either extreme view when you go somewhere, then you're likely to be set up for a shock and a disappointment later. The best thing for you to do is to merely just go somewhere and take only in your head ideas that actual men on the ground have given you, not even about that country, but about that specific city. That's what you need to take with you. You need to take with you the ideas that they give you about that specific city in that country. That's why Bangkok is not the same as Pattaya. And Isan, Thailand is where many of the women in Pattaya come from. And they're taking care of their families in Isan by working that trade in Pattaya. You have to be careful about that and pay attention and think about that. You cannot continue the way that you have been going, where you're going along with one extreme. We're oversimplifying things, and you have to understand that while you can use a simple explanation as a plan for something that you know is important, you still must flesh out a lot of details of your plan after visiting somewhere a few times. That's what has to be done in order for you to be smart about anything. Because you see, even for me in Saudi Arabia, I lived in the Bedouin areas of it. That's where I had to live first. That's where my company sent me. And they were anti-educational over there. Very hospitable, but not cerebral at all. They did not think about how to communicate with you and learn from you and to teach you. They were merely thinking of how do we spoil this guest, because there's social pressure to spoil a guest. And I told you all about that a long time ago. But then it also comes down to this too. When I moved into areas where the population was a bit bigger and less Bedouin, the education latitudes changed, and now I live somewhere where things are great. And I can now start to actually plan ahead. I've been to some other areas, and I've enjoyed them, visiting them. But I can also tell you all that there's no place you're going to go and get the opposite treatment that the Boomshikas and Bonquishas have given you when you were in the West growing up. They seek you out to destroy you. You're not going to go somewhere where they seek you out to build you up. You can go somewhere where in a marriage they can treat you much better, and they will treat you better. You can get that. But if you were looking to be healed just as quickly as you were torn down or bruised and cut, you ain't going to find that nowhere on the planet. And I didn't think that brothers were really entertaining notions this fantastic till I got here. Now I'm hearing some of that. Hearing brothers say things like, yeah, man, I had to tell one guy, I tried to tell him, and he kept interrupting. I realized I can't teach you nothing. Same as when we were kids. You ain't going to go to the Dominican Republic and get you this big old nice house. I mean, you could probably afford to do that. But then you fly women out there and just replace them every 3 months, and you just living your life that way, and don't none of the old ones come back to try to rob you for what they don't have access to no more. Because they 3 months ran out. That ain't how that works. You want to see women actually value a penis, you got to throw them in a woman's prison. And it's sad to say, but it's oftentimes like that, even in traditional societies. I wish it wasn't, but it oftentimes is that way. You got to put them into that kind of environment in order for them to decide later on, okay, you know what? I'm going to actually show some appreciation for a human Johnson. They will trade toys. I mean, I saw a headline a few days ago that more Americans are admitting to having relations with their pets, but all the photos were the women. Dudes don't want to risk putting that Johnson around another species with teeth and claws. It ain't dudes. At least not us. But I'm telling you, you're going to find that in many parts of the world, they're not going to really value that Johnson that openly and that honestly. Now, in a marriage, you'll find some women that will show you that when nobody else is around. But the way they will publicly tear you down is not going, it does not have an opposite when you go in other places. They're not going to publicly build you up and chase after you and validate you and make the whole world know that you're the coxman that they want. It's not the way that works. These broads are in it for the money. That's what they're in it for. They're in it for the dough. And if you take away their access to a wealthy environment, a 5-star environment, they're going to do whatever they can to try to get back to it. And if it means they got to set up a robbery with some of their partners to get at you, then they'll do that. And right now, Colombia is where they like to specialize in robbing. There's no reason they won't try to do it in the DR if they can do it and successfully pull it off. They're already ghetto as hell. I can tell by the way they speak Spanish they ghetto. One dude said he was going to fly some Colombian women in, and then when their 3 months is up, he flies them back to Colombia, and they're going to go over there with a bag. And I thought, well, okay, that's actually kind of smart. Kind of. But there's no reason that they wouldn't try to go back into the DR if they felt spoiled in in the DR. No reason they wouldn't fly back into the DR with some of their partners and their crew and try to set you up. No reason they wouldn't try to rob you maybe the night before they about to fly out. What did you think was going to happen, man? Bros, y'all got to understand. One of the reasons we got to tell these young brothers to stay away from these Westernicians is because when the Westernicians are done messing with you, messing with your minds, you will start looking for the opposite experience to offset the experience you had. The opposite don't exist. And then you will go abroad and you will land thinking you're going to find the opposite, and it's not going to exist there. And you get stuck in a loop trying to chase after what doesn't exist before you can feel fully healed and start making smart and wise decisions. Ain't going to be that way. And this is part of why it is that I've been telling you all that you must understand that what you went through, unless you provoked it yourself and knowingly at that, was not your fault. Why do I tell you it's not your fault so often? So that you don't sit up here and obsess yourself with trying to find a cure that doesn't exist. That's why I do that. That's why I tell you what I tell you. It ain't your fault. Now you can stop blaming yourself and stop trying to win the opposite treatment. I tell you that for that reason. You got one guy in Atlanta that gets 1,000 offers to house him. He said, I ain't got nowhere to stay. 1,000 women are like, boo, I'll put you up. Do you realize that while they might like the way he looks, they're really more so, the women that made the offer to him are more so in the age of social media upset at you, and they just want to rub your worthlessness, that your perceived worthlessness in your face. You realize that's what they're trying to do? You think they really want to take a man like that and house him on a long-term basis? I mean, they might want to do, and they may have been gotten accustomed to paying somewhat, but do you really think that on a permanent basis they want to house that man like that? No, they don't. What they want to do is they want to really rub in your face that you're worthless because you're a normal guy. Because now we're talking about this stuff. You ever wonder why the longer we go pulling the wool off of their games, the more brazen they get about some of their hypocrisy or stupidity? You ever wonder what that is? Why that's the case? Why do they start talking about going to Jamaica and Gambia to get some dingling from a dude that ain't got a house, but he got muscles? It was because you called them out on the other stuff before, so they decided they're going to rub this in your face. Atari did that with Dennis Sperling. That's right. They get it for free and you got to pay. That's right. because they're mad that you saw through it. That's what a lot of the stuff is that you see. So how is that your fault? It's obviously not. And if it's not your fault, then stop blaming yourself and stop trying to find absolution by trying to dazzle some other woman to turn around and just worship you. It's not going to work. And you don't want to be worshiped anyway. There's a reason I told you ye are not gods. Please get this message out, those of you that know this already. Please let your mans know as best you possibly can. I hope this is a benefit. Again, thanks for listening. And Black Heart, Black Mind, Black Out. Assalamu alaikum, and black heterosexual non-select male power because they don't like it in black patriarchy until extinction of Judgment Day. And thank you for flying again with us here on Jet Black Airways, where the phrase jet black is also a verb. Keep jet black with us till the wings and the wheels fall off. Gender justice forever.